You already know what time it is. It's Monday night, live in the Counselor's Corner for another open court discussion. I am your host, David Lorenzo Glover, aka the Controversial Counselor. Joining me is my co host, the Big Bad Wolf, Herb Lewis. That's a long growl. That's because we didn't have a show last week, so I'm sure he's ready to get at some folks. Uh, Welcome to tonight's special discussion on empathy and sympathy in young people, titled Empowering Empathy, the Future of Compassion. In a world where kindness, compassion, and understanding are more crucial than ever, we're exploring the roles that empathy and sympathy play in shaping the next generation, from the classroom to the community, and from social media to real life relationships. We'll delve into the ways in which young people are navigating complex emotions, building connections, and making a positive input. Join us as we discuss the importance of empathy and sympathy in today's society. We will discuss the challenges they face, the success they've achieved, and the ways in which we can all work together to foster a more compassionate and caring world. Please like to share our video and don't forget to tell a friend to tell another friend to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Controversial Counselor. 941 subs, nine away from the next goal. We are getting so close to the next goal of 950. Uh, Remain patient and stay with us. And here we are today. A lot going on. A lot going on. A lot has happened, and man, I'm gonna start it off. Then I'm gonna pass it on to the wolf. Well, today, brand new building, brand new building. Having luxury, felt like I've been in a penthouse. Well, today, walked in, had a flood over the weekend. It damaged our offices, the counseling office, the library. So we had to pretty
Ooh,
much get all of our stuff out. Carpet pretty much ruined. Office stinking. Because it was flooding and leaking since like Saturday night, and I guess they said it was some pipe or something with the air conditioning unit coil or something must have cracked, and then it was kind of warm, 60 something. Then it got like colder on Saturday night, but I guess the water that came out, the pressure was 150 degrees. So just flooded stuff. So that was my day moving stuff. And I'm like, this is not supposed to be happening here. This is not. So now we've been pretty much displaced and gotta had to find other places to work. And we're kind of, a close knit unit, but now we're kind of all separated. Well, and on the same floor, but all down the hall and like nowhere near each other. Because remember, this is a massive big school with three floors, three towers, 1,300 kids at a middle school. So
that's a lot.
just interesting times, man, ahead. But nothing shocks me like man, this has been a wild year. The things that has happened.
That's a lot of
So
students. Wow.
yeah, it is. And it's a major difference coming from a school that it usually be 700, 800 something, high 800s, but you throw in another 500, chaos, just total chaos. But so that was that. And then I had an interesting interaction I had posted, and it kind of ties in with the subject, but it also ties in with racism. I'm in an area that I'm familiar with, and so I happen to be going back to my car, but I'm getting something out the seat. I'm putting something in, adjusting stuff, and I hear somebody beeping, and I'm like, "Why are they beeping? Like, who are they beeping at?" So the person pulls in, and it's this 80, she got to be about 80-year-old white woman. So she stops. And I'm like, okay, like she pulling up on me. And I'm like, okay, is she waiting to park here? Is this her designated spot? And then I'm still really not, went back to doing what I was doing. And then she was saying, then I kind of heard her say, why is this nigga here?
Oh.
And so now I'm like, okay, okay. And then she drove and went a couple cars down, but you could still hear her mumbling, like, nigga this, nigga that. We got to get these niggas out of here. And so I said, oh, when I get in my car, I'm about to pull up on her. So I pulled up and I said, excuse me. And then she was like, why are you here? Why are these niggas here? We got to get these niggas out of here. And when I did originally did the thing, I said I wasn't going to say what I said. But this is the counselor's corner. And I'm just gonna say what I said. I was like, yo, mama a nigga, bitch. And yeah, it just yeah, I just had to let it go. And I was apologetic on my video about this. And I said, I know the former first lady said when they go low, we go high. And I said, I'm not built like that. I'm built from the world greater than, less than, equal. You give me less than, I'm gonna give you less than. You give me equal, I'll give you equal. You give me greater, I give you greater. Your mama's a bitch. Your mama's a nigga. And she still was mumbling on, and I'm like, shut your old ass. I mean, but I never was really upset because I have knowledge of myself, so I know who I am. But it was just to let her know you're just not going to say anything, and just to kind of ruffle her feathers. So I had to come back with something. Now y'all say, "Oh, that's not very counselor like." That's wrong answer. I don't know what counselors y'all think y'all know, but hey, sometimes I always mention him, Dr. Papperlato. I always said sometimes you got to hit people on the head to make them understand. So I had to hit her on the head back, like, listen, it ain't that type of party. But luckily, that was more of the easier, the more empathetic approach. Because now I kind of feel like, damn, you 80 some years old, and you still got that much rage and hatred. And but if I was someone else, I could have got out the damn car, snatched her
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
mushed her,
Yeah.
smacked her, and went about my business and just said, I'll deal with the consequences later. And but that never was a thought of mine. But I just wanted to make her feel a little uncomfortable. Um, but the next time, I hope someone gets this message to her, and more than likely it won't. But I got a funny feeling she'll probably slip up and say it again because at one point when she was talking, and then when she had moved and parked her car, she was still saying, I said, I wonder if this chick going through early stages of Alzheimer's or dementia, and she's sundowning and she just tripping, like,
Mhm.
because she just was going in about it, like, sort of like this was like the 1950s or 60s. And I'm like, I'm sure she interacts with black people on a regular basis in Baltimore, whether, a doctor's appointment, at the grocery store, the bank, anything. I'm sure she comes across them, but the way she was doing it, like it was just like a shock. And I'm sure people live in that area, blacks live in that area, but she's like, what is this? What is this nigga doing here? We got to get rid of these niggas. So I'm thinking, like, does she mean me period, or did she talking about us overall? Like we got to disappear. So that was my thing. Like it's crazy times. Racism is still alive, and it's still alive. Then I'm going to tie in this other point. So which reminds me of one of my students who said he made a comment about white people, and then this white girl heard him, and she said, "If you say that shit again, I'm gonna smack the hell out you." So he was like, you're not gonna smack me." Then when he was telling me the story, I said, "So why did you say that?" And then he said, "No, it was just shit. I was talking to somebody else, and she was all up in our business." I said, "But you shouldn't have said that somebody could hear it." I said, "You need to." I said, "When you having conversations like that, you need to be in a safe space." And I said, "Because at the end of the day, you're gonna look like the like the racist person, and you don't have those conversations in the cafeteria that other people could hear. But he really didn't get it. But then what drove home a point to him, I said, but this your MO. This is what you do. You like to attack other ethnic groups. And then he was like, what are you talking about, Mr. Glover? I said, remember last year, the Hispanics, the Mexicans, and you made the comments? All he could do is grin. Oh, yeah, yeah, you got me. I said, so I know you to throw out stuff like that. And I said,
Yeah.
not cool, man. Say that stuff in a safe space, man. So that's all I had. What's going on with you, Big Bad Wolf?
Man, I'm going, you know what? Those are two excellent stories. And I got one I want to follow up that's going to lead to how we came up with the topic. But what was it, Friday? Man, damn, they had to go to the emergency room. Now I'm stubborn. I'm just stubborn. I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm a older curmudgeon Gen X stubborn cat. My back alley is closer to the store. And I like to go down the back alley, even though it ain't plowed right. There's about 1.5 inches of ice. So I'm get down to the bottom of the alley. I get ready to turn and go down. I'm laying in the alley, grabbing my leg like I'm like I'm Nancy Kerrigan. I'm sitting in the alley talking about, oh man, god dang. So I get up, I make it through the store, I limp back home, and I'm saying to myself, damn, do I really want to go sit in the ER just for them to tell me it's, some slight bruises, some muscle, it takes some aspirin and acetaminophen? Because that's essentially what I ended up doing. And I called in to work that night because I didn't want to be walking around and limping. And it's still a little tender, but it feels much better. So people, listen to your old self. Start taking a long way to certain places when you're potentially going to end up in harm's way. But I want to come back to that story, both of those stories. Shout out to Dennis Sperling. He posted a clip from a Washington Capitals game. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Washington Capitals, it's a team based in DC that plays in the NHL. Now, I don't know the ages of the participants. All I know is the ethnicities. Black woman sits down behind the Caucasian female, and the Caucasian female is typing about black people. Now, there's some incendiary things that are said about black people in regards to education, academic progress, behavior, ghetto mentality, all the usual tropes. And the black woman's offended. And I'm thinking, why? Because I've been to plenty of hockey games before. You know what? I've had zero problems. But two things I always employ when I go to a sporting event. One is mind my goddamn business. What somebody's typing on their phone to somebody else is none of my business. This is what she gets for eavesdropping. The women, looking at y'all have a propensity to think that people have to kowtow to how you feel. Whether somebody's a racist, a bigot, or any of the like, leave them alone. So long as they're not bringing that to your doorstep, you got to let them be. We live in a country where we're free to behave and think and do as we want, so long as we're not bothering anybody else. Like I said, if somebody's bothering you, bring it back, just like David did. Somebody bothering you, hey, give it back to him. There's nothing wrong with that. But if somebody's minding their business, they're having a phone conversation or they're texting, leave them alone. Now, some people will say, well, what if it hurts my feelings? They're your feelings. You deal with them. Nobody else is responsible for making you feel good. And that's going to lead into where we're going now. Or did you have something else you want to say, Dave?
Oh, no, that was it.
Okay. Now, there was a situation where I believe the young man was 4th, 5th, maybe 6th grade. Dreadlocks. The story goes he was making fun of one of his classmates who lost their hair due to cancer. Word gets back home. His father takes him to the barber shop. Guess what he does? Off with the dreads. The boy sitting there crying, full of tears, screaming that he didn't do it. He didn't do it. The thing becomes, and I'm not talking about the correction of the behavior, if you will, aspect. That's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't come out anywhere on that. The thing becomes, how do we teach kids empathy and sympathy for things that they may not have an understanding of? And I was like, it's a hell of a lesson to teach. And that may be one way to teach it. There may be other ways to teach it. But when do we start? And it goes back to the situation with Dave. What if somebody has parents that think it's okay to behave like that? They don't correct their children. So I just wanted to put that out there. That's how we came to this particular, this particular thing.
I did. Auntie did have her segment too. I forgot all about it.
I was wondering.
I mean, if you want me to go with her now, I can pull her in.
Oh, absolutely. Wouldn't be a show without Auntie.
See, pull Auntie in here, see what she has to say about this subject. Hello, Big Bad Wolf. I'm just here to stop by to give my 2 cents, 50 cents, whatever you want to call it, about empowering empathy and the future of compassion. Now, like I done said it before, I done said it time after time about this younger generation. I do believe that there are certain factors that cause them to not be empathetic towards pretty much anything. These could be some rude bastards. I hate to say it, and excuse my French. But one of the things is trauma. These kids been through a lot. They seen a lot. Some of these kids done seen people in their community get shot. Some kids done seen, hey, mother, father killing mother, then killing themselves. So they tend to not galvanize around others. They kind of shut down, and it's almost like they numb towards a lot of things, which isn't good. But trauma is trauma, and they not really getting help because these parents ain't pushing for it. And then a lot of times when they get diagnosed, they want them to take medication, and people say, "Oh, I'm not putting my kids on no medication," but then they walking around, they depressed, they upset, and they just don't have no feelings toward nothing. Now I don't have that much time. I'm really running behind. You can see I had to go natural. I ain't even had time to do my hair like that. I got the gray highlights underneath. It's been one of those days. Then also again, social media. I keep saying about these images and social media and these video games ain't good because you're in a world of competition. There's nothing wrong with competition, but it seems like on social media, everybody fronting, they stunting, they faking jacks, they doing all that. And these kids, they comment, and it's about one upping people and see uh, who can be the top dog. So they have no the images and all of that stuff is just causing these kids not to be empathetic towards others. And another thing is too much screen time, too much computer time. It's not like back in the days when kids used to get all come home, change into their play clothes, and go outside and play into dinner time. And then if it's still light outside, and go back out and play. They don't do that. They own these games. They own these phones. So they're not communicating. They're not having those one-on-one conversations with their friends and learning to care for each other and learning to feel for each other because they playing these games and they may be talking on them headsets, but it's not the same to look somebody in their eyes and know they hurting and know that you should feel for them and be an empathetic listener. Those skills is lost. Now, and a lot of it is genetics. Sometimes you got some cold parents that they've been through trauma. So it's the vicious cycle. It just goes on and on and on. And it never changes. And it's a problem. Like what we gonna do about it? I'm scared for these kids. Yeah, I got some other points too. Let me see. Uh, personality traits. Some people just personalities just cold. Facial expressions, everything. They just don't look inviting. And to be the have empathy is to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and say, man, and be able to listen to that person and say, man, I know what you're going through because I've been through that. And things like that. You know, I done heard of situations where people have lost both parents and kids say stuff like, "Oh, now you're an orphan." What type of shit is that? Where do they learn that at? So it's things like that just drives me crazy as far as that. And then these mental health disorders. It's a lot of them. For example, antisocial disorder, narcissistic behavior, borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, PTSD, post stress syndrome disorder, like post trauma stress disorder. And you think about all of those diseases or mental health illness, it don't permit people to be empathetic. It don't be. Sometimes they sad, depressed, and they into their own feelings. Then it don't create the opportunities to care for others, like the disrespect or not connecting with the grandparents, not wanting to listen to what older people got to say. They're not learning well at all. They're not learning well, and they're not taking the message from the older generation and transcending it to the next whatever. So it's a lot. Then again, like I said last time, these crack babies, whatever, they upstairs, they hormones, they brain cells and all that stuff don't even register. They're like, oh my God, somebody just died. You should feel sorry. You should feel bad. You should say something. They just kind of look at you like, okay, what you crying for? Well, you just lost something. You lost some significant family member, or sometimes you lose pets and people, kids be upset, but I don't know about these kids. I don't know. But that's just what I wanted to add to it. I'm sorry if it seems like I'm rushing, but I got to go. What time is it right now? Okay. I've been on here at 7 minutes, so that ain't that bad. But I'm gonna get out of here. I just wanted to get the conversation going. I know the counselor and Herb gonna pick back, or the big bad wolf gonna pick back up on that and go. I just wanted to throw a few things out there, and y'all could just take the bait and do what y'all got to do with it. All right, y'all. Auntie out of here. Remember, do your best. Always, pay attention to your surroundings and uh, do pay attention and always pretend like if somebody was watching you when you do something. Even though somebody's not watching, always try to act, act your best, be your best as if somebody was watching you. We got a lot of people who do a lot of things, but I'm not going to get into that. All right, everybody, be well, enjoy your week. I'm gonna relax. I think I'm gonna get up early and do something with this hair. But it's one of those days. My stomach wasn't feeling too well again. I don't know. Sometimes I may not be eating right. I think it was that other night when I was watching that. I'd be thinking I'm young. Had me a cold drink, then had me a shot of bourbon, and to watch that Tank fight. Y'all see that fight? Y'all see that? What y'all think? I strolled through YouTube today and they said New York State might overturn that. They might overturn it and get that boy Roach the victory. That's gonna bring a lot of money and excitement to boxing. Cause Tank now he gonna have to step up his game. Boy, I love boxing. Know why I love boxing? I used to whoop ass in the day. All right, y'all. I'm gonna get out of here. I'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a great show. And good night.
Y'all just used to knuckle up. She ain't lying though, man. It's you know, I mean, in addition to the things that she said, I wrote down a couple things myself. But you know, this stuff is kind of like inoculations. Exposure to a lot of things, especially at a young age or a younger age, especially when you like, let's say, just before you start entering into second grade. So about 6, 7 years old, especially if you have a big family, you get to see a lot. And within those circles, you get to ask questions. And when you get to ask questions, you especially in our generation, you had your grandparents there and they would sit you down and say, well, hey, come here, let me explain something to you. It's okay when you're among us, you ask that question, but you have to be sensitive to how other people feel. So, when you go to church and you see somebody, we were told, don't stare. It's impolite. Not that we were trying to be impolite, it's just we didn't know any better. And some of those lessons that we were taught, we didn't necessarily teach our kids, and they're not teaching their kids. So when they see somebody with a club foot, first thing they want to do, they want to start joking and mocking them, and without regards to how it feels to have a club foot. The worst thing we may have saw back in our day, somebody that was overweight, somebody that may have had braces. And it was good natured teasing. We weren't doing it to, make somebody cry. And in the event that somebody did, he was like, hey, look, man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. We was just having fun. Now, we didn't realize then, having fun at somebody else's expense. That's mean. And we didn't necessarily want to be seen as mean to anybody. We was trying to have fun. That's it. So we said, hey, look, man, come hang out with us. Really? Yeah, you come hang out with us. You cool. And that was the way we built friendships. One thing Auntie said, too much screen time. These kids are not exposed to going outside 2 blocks over, across town, bike riding, all the things that Gen X kids did. And you meet different people. You might meet somebody that comes from a background where they don't have as much money as you do, holes in their sneakers or whatever. We were exposed to all of that. So you grew up with people who were different than you. They may not have had the same things as you. They may not have done the same things as you. And it was okay. We didn't necessarily select our friends based on what they had. Sometimes we selected our friends based on what they didn't have, man. Your mom don't make you do that, man. Shoot, I wish I could live with you. Your mom don't make you do that. You get to come home and not get out your school clothes, man. I wish I could do that, man. I gotta change out my school clothes as soon as I get home. You ain't gotta come home when the street lights on, man. I ain't home when the street lights on, man. I'm gonna get an ass whooping. All these things go into this. It goes into making us the adults that we are. David talked about the older woman. She may have been raised like that. People I think that's the silent generation. They were raised like that, and sundown towns do exist. So when David said it, I was like, oh, yeah, there are places where black people go when the sun go down. You get your ass out of town. That's America. That is a part of our heritage. Whether we like it or not, whether we want to discuss it or not, it exists. And the only way we can actually confront it, if you will, is to actually speak about it. And some people, they want to bury their heads like an ostrich and say, oh, that stuff doesn't exist. Before you start denouncing something, go research it. Because we are better off when we put the cards on the table. Archie Bunker, classic. We can't play Archie Bunker now because people are too sensitive. So you got to go to, I think TV Land might play. Same thing with the Jeffersons. That was television we identified with because that was the time that we grew up in. Now, does it make it good? Does it make it bad? Does it make it right? Does it make it wrong? It made us what we were. In essence, we grew up and say, you know what? He's just like my uncle. He ain't gonna never change. But you know what? I love him. Because they're not bothering anybody. And as long as you're not bothering anybody with that mindset or with any mindset you have, you're okay. The problem comes when they start teaching their kids like this. And they say, oh no, leave him alone. Leave her alone. It's okay that they poke fun at people. Well, he shouldn't be a bedwetter or she should be a bedwetter. Just imagine how that feels. You in the second grade, you might be wetting the bed. Somebody find out. You get to school, and all of a sudden now, they start pinning stuff on your back of your shirt, taping notes, passing notes around, and you the butt of the jokes. The only problem is you don't realize that, and now you got to fight because every day you come to school, somebody talking jokes about you, and you done got fed up to hear, and they say you got a behavior problem. No, the kid is sick and tired of being teased, but nobody listened to him. She's sick and tired of people talking about her secondhand clothes, but nobody helps her out. Kids are like adults too. David always says this. They're many versions of us. They're learning what we do. They're reacting to the same stimuli we do. The only problem is they don't have the bandwidth to deal with it on an adult level. So they lash out and people want to label them as having behavior problems. Well, yeah. As an adult, you would too, but you get to go to HR. Who do they get to go to? A behavioralist, like David said they want to medicate them? Or, I'm sorry, Auntie said they want to medicate them? No. Get them out of that environment. Get them away from the people who make their existence miserable. As adults, we don't do that. If somebody's around us and they talking trash and we don't want to be around them, guess what? We get up and leave. We don't sit there and subject ourselves to that. But these kids don't have a choice most of the time. And adults don't listen to them. Maybe the kid's not expressing themselves in that way, so the adult don't understand. But some of these kids, they're in a no-win situation. They don't have anybody to vent to, and if the child is an only child, they really got it hard because they don't have anybody to play with, don't have anybody to talk to, and like Auntie said, the screen time is a huge detriment to these kids growing up having a diverse group of people that they hang out with and talk to on a daily basis. Because if everything you do through a screen is through a screen, you're kind of desensitized because you don't get to see the immediate impact of your words. So even if you do something to somebody, and somebody does something to you and they say you're sorry, are they really? Or are they just going through the motions?
Yeah. Well, and one of the things, like far as empathy, and what I find out by from working in the schools over the years, you barely seldom always look for the students who kind of will pull the students that's perceived weak or who may have deficits in learning or may not be on point fashionably with everyone else. And you know, when I grew up, I don't know. I was that I was that kid that was like, listen, certain things ain't right. And as I, was going through this, I always think about this one scenario that over the years I never really thought about. But I mentioned it before. But I just want to read what he had said, and I'm not going to give his whole name, but what I had did for him as a kid. So my name is JB from Niagara Falls. I can recall when I was 13 years old, my first year playing organized football for Cataract Pale Eagles, being bullied by a group of veterans on the team. My dad would give me money to stop at the store on my way home from practice. Back then, when we rode our bikes to fit in, I would give the guys my money. I was too afraid to mention this to my coach and my family. This behavior affected my play on the field. One Sunday, on our way to a road game, David witnessed those guys receiving money from me and made them give it back and told me that I had nothing to fear. He had my back. From that day forward, my confidence went up and my play improved, and I took over the starting role at cornerback. 30 years later, David is still helping those who can't help themselves. There has been many times in my personal, professional, and coaching life I had to reflect on that time when someone stood up for me and I returned the favor. Today, I would like to take the time out to thank David for changing my life 30 years ago. And this was about 10 years ago. So, that story always resonate with me because I didn't think about it. And then one time I was in town, and we were standing in front of the bar, summertime, and he was like, "Dave, we always crack jokes." He was like, "Thank you." I said, "For what?" And then he was like, "For believing me when I ain't believing myself, and for having my back." And he said that that kind of gave him the confidence to do better, and he reflected on like how he got into leadership positions and stuff after that, because I gave him confidence, and that was just something I felt in my heart that it was the right thing to do. Like, yo, he on her team, what are y'all doing?
Yeah.
And uh and uh you know and and those are the type of things, like, sometimes you can teach it, but the one thing, you have to be around it, and that was one of the things Auntie meant, the screen time, where these kids, if you're not in those situations that impact your heart, because that impacted me. I'm like, well, why are they getting money from him? And he was nervous, like, giving it to him. And then I said, listen, why y'all getting this money? And they was like, well, why you worried about it? I said, y'all got parents, whatever. I said, from this day forward, you better not give them nothing. If they ask you for something, they got to go through me. Oh, what you got to do with it? And he never gave them no money. He stood up for himself, and he became a better player. Sometimes
Mhm.
that's all somebody need is the feel for them and for that situation, and to move forward. And probably it was a return because somebody did that for me as
Mhm.
well. When I was younger, I was on a team, and I told this story before. They put me on the Eagles, or no, maybe it was the Steelers. So that was like 11 to 13, and then All Stars was like pretty much 8 to 10. So I think I was 9. So they put me on the 11-year-old team, 11, 12-year-old team, and obviously, and it's a big difference of coordination
Oh.
when you're 9 and you're 11 or 12, and you're doing tire drills and all that stuff, going through the coordination. I couldn't do that at the time, and but I went to day camp at the community center, and it was some of the boys that was 11 and 12-year-old. They couldn't wait to see me at day camp to pick on me. And one guy stood up, and he was like, "Yo, why y'all messing with little man like that? Like, he on our team. Like, He's like, how old are you? I was like, shit, 9. He's like, shit, he probably shouldn't even be on our team.
Yeah.
But y'all messing with him. And he's like, yo, leave him alone. And they kind of backed off. But just think, this is the things that kids do.
Hmm.
And sometimes you look for kids to say, shit, I'm about to help this person out instead of going with the in crowd. So to me, I always look for kids. When kids do that without telling, you know they special. You know they special when you don't have to tell them and they just say, man, I sided with this person because it was wrong. And I wanted to let my friends, and I didn't care if they didn't talk to me from here on out. I just knew what they was doing was wrong. You know, that's a special kid. And there's a lot of special kids. It's some way got to be brought out. But I think all the other influences, like I said, social media, the video games, and all that, it's hard to see who the special ones are. And I think that's the dilemma that we be facing.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if we didn't actually look at the gender aspect of this. We obviously both of us are male, so we always speaking from a male perspective. But it seems with younger women, especially when they get to that 8, 9 prepubescent into puberty, things really get tough for them. Fashion, um, appearances, everything that goes into that for younger girls who don't fit the bill. From what I hear, and David might be able to shed some more light on this, they can get really tough with each other. And there's certain situations, and I've read some things. Let me let me put it like that. With girls being the target. I remember, I was at Laso Prep, and kids used to leave stuff behind, notes and stuff. I go clean up, and on occasion I read one. I was just like, and I, as an adult, when I read this, I was just like, yo, is that how these kids are getting down? Now there was a young girl in there. She couldn't have been no older than 13, maybe 14, pushing it. And it was a note that a boy had left behind talking about how they were doing all these things to her and with her. I'm just like, yo, why would you even speak about that? And why would that even be a topic of discussion in school? So I was floored by it. And I didn't give the note to anyone because I was like, I'm not necessarily trying to get somebody in trouble. I don't know who wrote it. I do know who the target of the ridicule was. But what can I really do? I was only there 2 days a week. And I would have liked to have pulled the young girl aside and say, hey, look, I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe you want to speak to somebody about this. But I one of the few times in my life as an older adult, because this is about 4 years ago now, that I kind of felt powerless. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to speak to. So I knew that if I didn't as an adult, she surely didn't as a young girl. So, between younger girls and, when you start to get into um, cross gender, it can be brutal for some people who are marginalized to find support or even have a voice to stand up and speak out and say, hey, look, I'm not going to tolerate this. So when you see somebody that's being marginalized like David, say, hey, say something. Stick up for them. Because we don't know what people go through when they're not around us. And unless you hang out with that individual, you don't know what their living situation is. Hell, most of us have good friends that they've had something to happen to them that was traumatic when they were younger that they never spoke about. And I'll offer up a antidote. I was in about the fifth grade. Fifth grade. Now, literally, and I kid you not, there's only 2 black kids in the entire school. Only two. Me and the other girl who was the niece, I believe, of the family that I was staying with. So we in the library, and I'm not gonna mention the young man's name because I don't know where he is right now. Funny though. And he pulls out a slave book, or I'm sorry, an encyclopedia, turns to the slave and say, "Hey, look, these are your people chained up in the bottom of the boat." Now, I had to be measured in my response. I could have dusted him off, but I know how that was going to come across, and it wouldn't have been good. So I was forced to turn inside, and I started to cry. Nobody asked why. Yeah, I was in the fourth grade. Mrs. Bowman, shout out to Mrs. Bowman. I don't know if she's still alive. And she pulled me aside. She said, "What's wrong?" And I told her. She said, and I think she was floored by the fact that it actually even occurred. Because I don't know what brought it about because we weren't covering it in history. And, she said, "Hey, look, you can't let stuff like that bother you. He doesn't know any better." And the irony about the boy who was doing it was he was adopted. So, and it was from that day forward that, I kind of realized and understood some things that I was going to have to deal with. And the way that I deal with them is not necessarily by being upset, is by acknowledging certain things and acknowledging the fact that some people are just going to be assholes. And you can't let assholes get to you like that. But it's easy for me to say that now, looking back then, nah, I wanted to explode it. It's like the whole LeVar Burton, Lawrence Fishburne thing. So, I mean, we get into gender issues, then we get into ethnic issues, um, traveling. That's that's always a huge thing for kids. And I always say that, you know, exposure will make or break a kid. So if a child has the opportunity to go somewhere, allow them to. It only can enrich them. They will learn so much about other people, other places, and they will be less prone to picking on people because of differences. I mean, I see that at my place of employment with my coworker, and now it's it. We go back there, we get in the back office, and we just sit there, we look at each other, we just shake our head because now we understand each other. I understand things from his perspective, he understands things from my perspective, and we just say, "Wow." We just say, "Wow," and we keep going because we realize that no matter what we do, there's going to be certain people that just have an ingrained behavior, and there's not going to be anything that you can do about it. You have to see it, and you have to step over it, if you will, and you say, "You know what? That's the way they were raised. They're going to be like that, and there's nothing you can do other than to just brush the behavior aside." Easy for adults, not so easy for kids, particularly if that child is being subject to that um, treatment by an adult, and that's something we also need to look at in terms of this.
Yeah, and all of this, it's a lot to it. The initial question when Herb asked, "How is it going to be taught?" Um, Good question. I always said, and I've been saying it for a long time, that schools won't change until they really start putting an emphasis on 50% academics, 50% social. And when you're dealing with behavior issues, some of it may stem from kids just may not understand, so they act out. They act out, but that's a part of social too, to be able to say, "I just don't understand." I don't, I can't, you got kids that they don't like to read out loud because they don't know how to read, or they could get picked on.
Mhm.
And so they shy away from that. All of that stuff is connected, but you can't say, because at one point schools used to be fun for kids. Granted, some kids wasn't the highest achiever, but they enjoyed coming to school because you would have Halloween parties and different things and different activities. But now, because we want to compete with all the other countries and say this and that, stop worrying about everybody else. Do what got us here and stop focusing on, oh, we want to be competitive, whatever. Who came up with that shit? Why are we worried about somebody in Finland or something like that when we have our own issues? And it's a struggle because kids, the importance of, to me, the balance. Oh, my thing dropped.
Yeah, no, you good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Or you can't hear
Uh,
yourself.
the importance of, yeah, I can hear it. The
Okay.
balance of, I always say, social and academics, because these kids, they're lacking socially. Like, it's a lot of things that you're like, wow, like, you don't understand that if somebody's door shut, you don't just barge in. Or when you walk into an office, you say hello, greet somebody who's sitting at the front desk. This stuff, yeah, it should be taught from home, but then you'll see their parents come in
Mhm.
and you're like, oh, so now I know why that they behave this way. So I always said it needs to be a balance, because you can't, no matter what, if you someone has straight A's and you master that, but you have no social skills, how are you going to work in a job? Uh, because you might have got these grades and they might be more of independent. That was probably the thing about empathy too that I read. Like, some people that they're high achievers and they get good grades, but that also permits them to kind of isolate themselves from people. Like, well, I do what I got to do. I don't like working in groups. I like to work independently and get good grades. And I don't want to socialize with anybody else. Now they may be viewed as they think they're better than someone else.
Mhm.
So, kids pick up on that too. So it's a lot of stuff that, like I said, it's important, that social aspect of school, as well. And somehow, got to make it fun for them again. You got to make it fun. I mean, I know they have incentives at the end of the quarter and all that stuff. But it needs to be fun weekly for kids. Something at the end of the week. Classes need to have challenges. I'm gonna give this, and I know people don't want to pay their own money. Well, I swear, if I was a teacher, I'll be like, okay, that's a part of. I'll eat it. If I could get my class in line, then I'm gonna have some at the end of the week. I'm gonna have 2 or 3 prizes that these kids gonna get, and they gonna get. We gonna get real competitive up in here, and but it's gonna be with respect. And you got to do something. You got to do something, because again, we think about it. They play video games. They on social media, and they're looking for views. Everything they're looking for is to try to be the top, to be the best. So when you have their attention at school, don't you think it's a wise idea to come up with programs that, not quarterly, not 10 weeks, because that's too long. Remember, these are instant gratification people, like we say, microwave society, that they want it then and there. So you can't wait 10 weeks later. That's too long. Like 10 weeks. You gotta do it on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Something, it ain't gotta be much. It ain't gotta be much. It could be a $20 gift card
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. Like, oh, whoever, these are the rules, these are the parameters, whatever. I'm looking for the people who complete their homework, the people I don't have to speak to, and I'm gonna narrow it down. Uh, at the end, these are going to be the people that's going to be. I'm going to let y'all know by Wednesday or Thursday. These are the people that are eligible to get the $20 gift certificate. And you change it up every time, but nah, we don't do that. So we continue to deal. We don't kind of intersect or cross reference to everything that's going on. Like, oh, we know they like instant gratification. We know that their views and stuff like that on social media is important to validate them. So why you don't think in the classroom that you need something to stand out? You just can't wait to say, okay, the honor roll ceremony, everybody was, straight A's or a 3.2, 3.3 grade point average. Well, that's not some people. Some kids probably will never get that,
Yeah.
but they'll shit. If you say perfect attendance, they're there every day. They turned in their assignments and all that. They need a shot at something. And once they start winning something, they say, shit, hey, maybe I need to step my grade up a little bit. Hey, I'm a winner. I won this 2 weeks in a row. You get confidence. And the reason I say that because I think one of my teachers, Miss Roble, used to in third grade, used to have like a sedative type of thing, and we would get prizes because I didn't like school like that. I didn't like math. I would remember always when it was time to do math, I would act like my stomach hurt and would get sent home. And I remember used to be some old ass lady, old ass lady used to pick you up if your parents could come get you and drop you off at home. I remember that. And take you home when you were sick. And I used to always do it around math time. But ironically, eventually math ended up being like my favorite subject through high school, through um, junior high, high school, and all that stuff. But I didn't always like it. But what I did like when I had a teacher who gave an incentive program at the end of the week, you could get prizes. And that made me elevate my game to say, hey, I got to be in it to get this prize because that's what people are in it for. They want to be rewarded. We know that. Shit, just like at a job. You don't want to work 2, 3 years, you don't get a raise.
Yeah.
What's the point? You don't
Mm.
get no benefits. What? I can't go. Oh, we used to go and work. I used to be able to go on conferences to go out of town. The boss used to pay for it. I can't do that now. It's not working. That's why you got a lot of disgruntled employees and all that stuff. And I know the money's just not there. It's just not in our budget and all that. All right, because you got so much of a turnover rate that nobody wants to be at the places of employment. So it's a lot of stuff that connect. What's going on, Brian? Peace, man.
Yeah, it was well. And you know what? To follow that up, there's, as stupid as this is going to sound to some people who know the company's bottom line, there's always a way. The question is, do you want it bad enough? Well, people say, well, the budgets are tight. Budgets are always tight. But how do you get creative? How can you take a shoestring budget and make that work? Throw something out there for you. And some of you out there might be educational professionals. I want you to do this. For those of you who can, recycle bottles and cans, found chains, like David said, store cards. $5 a week. Not a whole lot of money. And I'm sure most of the educational professionals can scrape up $5 between you and your staff. I'm going to issue you a challenge, especially for those of you who have kids that misbehave. Here's what I want you to do: get the list of kids together among yourselves, and in class say, hey, look, we're having a contest. Call the kid out. Call him out or her out. Say, look, this is a contest between these students. Saying, you guys always go down to the principal's office. You're always being contacted. Your parents are always being contacted. Here's the deal. The one who ends up having the least amount of trips to the principal's office for disciplinary reasons, you're going to get what's in this envelope. Could be $15, could be $20, could be a card to your favorite store so you can get something. But you got to win the contest. You win this contest with these other people. End of the week, we'll see who wins. Let them know, because we don't realize that just like adults, competition drives things. Kids' competition drives things. Usually we see it with boys though, and it's in sports. We don't tend to see it with girls. We see it with girls. We see it in terms of attractiveness, maybe academic pursuits, or hey, at the and if you have multiple students, hey, get their parents, say, hey, look, as a reward for your child not being disruptive in class, we want to take them to Subway. Get a group of them, run it by your VPs. Say, hey, we want to take them up to Domino's. We want to get them a pizza. Sometimes you have to look outside of what is to get something achieved. That's why small things to greater success. As like David said, greater than, less than, or equal to. What do you want? Because if you want it, there's a way. You want to homogenize class? Sit your class down and say, hey, look, we're going to have a contest. I'm going to take one of my students that's performing well. I'm going to task that individual with helping out the one who's not performing well. Let's see how well you teach. You're a great student, but can you teach? Can you lead? No, man, I can't do it. Why can't you do it? Because they'll never listen. Well, that's your job. We're going to task you with helping your classmates. Because if they do better, you do better, because they're going to push you. You're no longer going to be the smartest person in class. We know you want to be the smartest person in class. So we're going to ask you, help your boy out, help your girl out, help each other out. And people will say, well, what good will that do? In college, guess what a lot of people have? Study groups. When you get into the workforce, guess what you have to do a lot? You got to work with other people. You might need to brainstorm to fix a problem or to address some issue. And we're, especially in the United States of America and globally, we're moving into situations where one person might be the only person of that group that's in that group. So if a person has to, let's say a person has to go to Germany and they're the only American there, they might be a minority American. They got to work with people where, hey, they're unfamiliar with the customs. They don't know the language. They don't know the customs. Somebody's going to have to help them. Are they open to being helped? Or are they stuck being stuck? In other words, do they not want to be helped? Do they want to be the least successful person in the classroom? Are they comfortable with being the class clown? And understand, some people are comfortable being the class clown because that's all they know. And they don't want to be uncomfortable. David always says to get comfortable, sometimes you got to get uncomfortable. Sometimes people are afraid of success because it opens up a door to them that they are unfamiliar with. You know, they keep going, they say, hey, I'm scared. I don't know what's on the other side. It reminds me of the portion in the movie Glory, where Sergeant Rawlins, where Corporal Rawlins is promoted to sergeant. And he says to the captain, he said, I ain't sure I'm wanting this. He says, I know just how you feel. I'm sorry, Colonel Shaw. He says, I know just how you feel. For people, success can be scary because they've never been there. They don't know how to deal with it. So push your kids, but make sure when you do, there's something on the other side because they may be alone in that success, and it's scary. I will tell you there are some things that you go through, and when you get through them, you say, you know what, it wasn't that bad. You know what, I kind of like this feeling. I like the adulation. I like the recognition, and eventually or soon they're doing it on their own, not because they want to be recognized, but because they like the gratification and the internal feeling that they get. Case I know when I was running hurdles in high school, and I started, I was bad, but I just wanted to do it. I said, nah, man, I got to get better. At the end of the year, I was knocking them down, so to speak. And I didn't need the validation from everybody else, even though I got it. The validation was within myself because I was like, hey, man, I did it.
Mm.
I put all this time, all this effort, all this energy into this, and I'm good. I'm real good. And like I said, I can't speak from a female perspective, but I know as a guy, to accomplish something like that, oh yeah. So now I was at a point where I can say, look, man, you can do this. They say, no, no, I can't, man. I've never been successful at this. What up, D? And they say, I've never been successful at this. You can draw on your own strength and say, man, you know what? I understand. I tell you what, don't look at the end of the road. Just look at next week. I want you to do this and give them a little bit because the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And every step that an individual takes puts them closer to that goal. And you might have to do that with a kid. You might have to put a couple kids together and say, hey, look, I understand you guys had differences. I want you. And this is, and I, it's funny how movies for me, they always play a role in how I learn. In the movie Remember the Titans, remember when he had each team member pair up with the other one? He said you can learn about their customs, the musics, what they like, what they dislike
Mm.
when they went away for the summer. Now people will say, "Oh, that don't work with these kids. Why won't it?" Giving them an incentive, incentivize kids' education. That's what David is always saying. There's no joy for them going to school. It's just regimented learning, test, teach to the test, do this, do that. Make learning fun. And if you as an educational professional have to bring in some things like when we went to school, Rubik's cubes. Simon says, say, hey, look, if we get through today's lesson and we got a few minutes, I'll pull out the Simon Says. I'll pull out this. We can play tic tac toe. We can do this. You have to be creative sometimes in your education, even though it is not time. And you might get time at the end of the week. Got 5 days. Great.
Yeah, I think that whole teaching to the test and rushing people through, they feel like they got to be on a time frame, took away some creativity. But in order for something to work, that's just like even in relationships, you got to have creativity.
Mhm.
You got to do something to stand out. I mean, uh, going to the movies, going to dinner, doing all that stuff, that's customary. The only thing that makes it stand out is the person that you're with, their conversation, or the little subtle things that they do that you recognize. Uh, but other than that, pretty much people may the same type of say the same type of things, but what do you do or say to get someone's interest? Same thing with teaching. It's something that makes students say, "Man, that's my favorite teacher," or whatever the case is. It's something you got to do or say to stand out. And even as counselors or whatever, not everybody's gonna like everybody
Yeah.
or what they have to offer, bring to the table, but it has to be something that you do. And it can be your style, someone that's consistent, but it's something that make people gravitate towards you. So when you when I think about empathy, also I think about validating someone's feelings.
Hmm.
Uh, even again, school relationships, and I'll go back to counseling 101 with Dr. Pappalardo. I was doing had to do a tape and was audio like a tape cassette, had to talk, and then he would come in, listen to it, then he would interject and record over stuff. And one of the key things he had mentioned, which a lot of times people don't validate, I was dealing interviewing or counseling one of my boys, and he mentioned something about, man, that shit made me angry as hell, and I kind of bypassed when he said that, and then Dr. P interjected in the thing, and he was like David, you got to address that. You got to be good with your tongue.
Hmm.
Uh, got to be good with your tongue. You got to adjust that. You can't go on once someone expresses their feelings. You got to validate it. You got to address it. You got to find out why he's angry or
Yeah.
whatever the case is. So I was like, man, still, I was, an older student in the program, but had worked. But I guess I never had paid attention to that. I was like, that was deep. That was a deep thought. So when somebody tells you something, even in a relationship, and they're like, man, that pissed me off. You got to validate it. What part of that made you pissed off?
Yeah.
What did I do to piss you off? And that goes a long way because people feel like they're heard. So that's about empathetic listening, hearing what someone says. A lot of times, and the great Stephen Covey always say, sometimes we listen to respond, listen to reply instead of listen to understand. So we used to find that out when we used to have people on a panel, bunch of people. They just couldn't wait. They ain't hear shit. They're like, oh, I just. And a lot of times you have in relationships, people like, don't hear nothing you say because they can't wait to respond. So empathetic listening is a thing to kind of hearing people out. And there's a difference between empathy and sympathy.
Yeah.
Me, give me empathy. Sympathy means you're feeling sorry for somebody. And a lot of times you see that stuff on social media. People post stuff because they're looking for that. Oh, it's so sad. It's so sad.
You do see it, man, and sometimes it's borderline pathetic, man. It really is. I'm just
Like, yo, they out here
and I just
capping,
say,
trying to come up.
yeah,
Oh,
get
poor thing. Anything you need or whatever. Nah, get your ass out of here, whatever. You want people to understand what you feel it. Sympathy means to feel sorry for someone. Empathy is to feel with them. I hear what you say. You just lost your grandmother. Damn, I remember how I lost my grandmother. It was
yeah,
tragic and stuff like that. And then you say, oh, okay. Then y'all connect. And then you
right.
share certain things, whatever. But then again, you have some guys just put stuff out there and they look, oh! They looking for that moment. Want somebody to feel
Yeah,
sorry
and
for.
I think the the thing I know in our generation was, kids ought to be seen and not heard. And I don't know if that necessarily holds sway today. A lot of these kids, and I don't know what it has more to do with in terms of the kids nowadays saying we want to be heard. I don't know if it's because the parents don't take them serious enough, or the kids actually have ideals on how they want to be raised. Now, I will say this as the parent, you should not be listening to your kids on how they want to be raised. But there's a caveat, and I'll use a Ben Roethlisberger story. And I don't know if David's heard this before. When Ben got to Pittsburgh, Coach Coward was a coach. And Coach Coward apparently was a coach that would yell at his players when they get something wrong. He wanted to do right. He yelled at Ben. Ben walked over to him and said, Coach, I don't respond well when people yell at me. We need to understand the kids that we are dealing with. This is a conversation I was having with David earlier. Especially as Gen X people, we're expecting a certain outcome with the kids because that's how we were raised. We have to realize these kids are different. It's not necessarily different bad or different good. They're just different. They didn't grow up under the same pressures that we did. So when we're speaking to them, we have to be mindful that they're not where we were when we were their age. So when we're speaking to them, we have to be mindful of where they are emotionally. You want to read that, David?
Yeah, I read it. I know it blocked you. So,
Oh yeah, no, you good. Yeah, go ahead.
Brian said communication is key. The minister asked a question while in a panel with other brilliant minds. He asked, what good is a brilliant mind disconnected from the body? Oftentimes, teachers are not connected due to the fact that they are using the same verbiage but speaking different language. A Tower of Babylon experience. Likewise, in a relationship, if I'm not understanding my spouse' love language, there will always be missed opportunities. If she hates satin sheets because she had a bad experience on, and that's
Yeah.
true. So one of the things we have to do, well, I talk about KYP, know your personnel.
Mm-hmm.
So when Herb mentioned that Roethlisberger went up to the, you got to give him kudos. Like, I don't respond to nobody yelling at me, whatever, because that might have been some trauma. Hey, that's the shit I heard all the time. Don't yell at me like that. And so some kids, like even me, I can't use the same approach. Some kids I can use humor and crack jokes because I know they get it. But then
Mm-hmm.
some I have to have a different approach with. So you got to kind of know who you dealing with. But that requires taking time and
Yeah.
not looking at them as a number or by the alphabet. It's like getting to know who you dealing with. And I think once you know people, then I think that's when empathy and all that stuff comes into play. But again, when we talk about the generation and when they don't get to know each other, they see each other in
Yeah.
school, because I often ask, do y'all see each other outside of school? They're like, no. Or you have people that call themselves in relationships, little middle school relationships. Do y'all hang out? No. So it's just a school thing. But when you get to hang out, y'all go over each other's houses or y'all out hanging out, you develop a closeness and you develop a bond that you say, man, they off today. They're not something's wrong with them and it's bothering you, because when you're close to somebody, you can almost feel it that something's
Yeah.
not right. with them. And when this generation, when they don't never had that opportunity to get close because they or typing and all that shit, some always gonna be off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where we at. And again, in education, maybe the same way. You got to get to know. Once you get to know your personnel, because some kids would they'll never say anything. They'll be sitting in the back of the class, and you'll never get to know who they are. But it's up to you to kind of got to find a way to bring some out. I got to find something, some key point to identify or remember something they said. I can tell you this: if you remember something they did or said, out of the blue, you gain their respect. Wow, you remember that? Hmm. Yeah. And remember, I told the story earlier about the boy who was making the racist things, and I said, "But that's your MO." Yeah, remember? I said, "Remember the Mexicans last year?" And that drove that point home because he knew, like, yeah, Mr. Glover was really paying attention. I said, because you made little comments about them too. That's what you do, but you need to learn to do that in a safe space. So he connected the dots because he knew I had data on him. Got to collect data on people. When you start collecting data mentally,
Hmm.
you got all the power collected that. Even in relationships, when you collect data, oh, remember this? Remember you said that? Remember this day? Hey, I'm gonna tell you this. This happened this day, such and such. Remember when? Uh, yeah, you right. You right. Yeah, collect data.
Yeah, because and you know what the funny thing about that is this: a lot of people, particularly kids, they run from themselves, whether they don't like that about themselves or they don't think that it's true, which is what David, the example that David's giving. Sometimes we have to hold that mirror up in front of kids and say, "Hey, I'm not telling you you're a bad person, but this is how you appear to other people." So when you say people don't like you, do you ever ask them why? And I guarantee you, they will say, "No, I don't care." That's not true. If there's one thing that kids do care, it's about not being liked, especially young girls. Ask these kids to sit down and write the things down negative that people say about them, and then have them write down the things that people say positively about them. I guarantee you that the negative list will be longer than the positive list. And some people will say, well, why does that matter? Because we're talking about sympathy and empathy. When an individual understands why somebody doesn't like them, they're going to go out of their way to try and make themselves more likable. Now, that's not wrong, it's not right. But what these kids don't understand is why somebody may not like them. Somebody may not like them because they're doing something that somebody else did that they didn't like. So they say, hey, I don't like you because you're doing this. And it may not be bad, it may not be good. If I don't like being yelled at and somebody yells at me, well, I don't like them because they yell at me. If somebody makes jokes that about me that I don't like, guess what? I don't like them because they make jokes about me that I don't like. Doesn't mean that people are bad. So we have to get these kids to understand the difference between not being liked because they do things that are wrong and not being liked because they do things that remind somebody of something that was bad. It's just like the statement that Brian made. It might be an experience that triggers something. It might be a song that triggers something. They say, hey, you know what? I don't like that. Turn it off. I'm not turning that off, man. I like this. As opposed to understanding. The greatest thing about people, especially kids, is they have the ability to understand. but you have to be able to reach them at the level of understanding that they're at. Just like David said, every kid's not the same. Don't make the mistake of believing that all these kids are the same. They all learn the same. No, some kids learn slower, some kids learn quicker. You have to find out, and I know it's difficult for teachers, and I'm aiming this at the educational professionals out there. I appreciate the work you guys do. I understand you have a difficult job. So employ your other students. I said this before. Employ your other students. Employ your students that are doing well to help you help those that aren't doing well. Some incentives. And you know what? If you can't pair them together, because guess what those students who are doing well are going to tell you? They're going to say, well, Mr. or Mrs. Such and such, when I do this, they don't understand that because kids will speak to each other more so than they will adults because they know the adults are going to go at it one way. The students aren't going to go at it like that. They're going to say, well, look at it like this. Try this. Try this. Because they're going to teach them the way that they learn, not the way that you have been taught to teach them. And sometimes we have to look at things differently. If we look at things through different prisms, we say, oh, I get it. I understand because I was great with math till they started putting letters in. Once they started putting letters in, I was like, oh no, y'all can have that. That ain't no math. That's I don't know what y'all call that, but that ain't math.
Mm.
Binomials, trinomials, all that stuff. I was like, how do you know when to do what? And that's what I was like, man, I'm done with math. But it was funny. I got to a point where, like in my senior year, because I had to double up because I was behind. And I got to a point where I was like, okay, now it makes sense. But I had to have a teacher pull me aside and say, well, what do you see when you see this? I said, I don't know what to do first. I don't know whether to work inside the parentheses or outside the parentheses or when to do this or when to do that. I said, oh, okay. Well, when you see this formation, this is what you do. When you see this formation, this is what you do. And all of a sudden it made sense. Because I saw that because it was funny when I was doing volunteer mentor, some of the same problems that I had, some of the students had. I said, oh, well, I see what their problem is. And I would miss her maiden name was Mr. Colangelo. She had gotten married, so I can't remember what her married was. And I said, can I stop you for a moment? She said, sure. I said, I see what your problem is because I used to have the same problem. I said, so don't look at it like you see it now. Look at it like this. Ba, 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 ba. And I said, oh. I said, I had the same problem when I was sitting in the seat that you were. See, a lot of these kids, they don't think we were where they are. They don't think we had to struggle with not being the popular kid, with not being successful, with not being well liked, without having, the latest fashion, not having the best haircut. They don't know we've been through those things. They think, hey, you're an adult. What do you know about being my age? What do you know about struggling? And that's when you got to pull on side and say, hey, look, I've been there. I know what it's like not to have money. I know what it's like not to have the best clothes. I've been there. But you have to do it. It's got to be done in a way that the kid believes you, because far too often a lot of these kids are being left to toil on their own. Like David said, they don't hang out with each other. They don't identify. They don't play sports together. They don't board games, Monopoly, Sorry, like they don't do any of that stuff. What's that? We don't play Uno. We don't play Connect Four. We don't play Tic Tac Toe. They don't hopscotch. The girls don't double dutch. The boys, hell, are the boys even playing crazy tackle, touch football, flag football, baseball? Are they doing any of that stuff? Probably not. So they don't build rapport. They don't build relationships. So they're never going to learn empathy and sympathy the way we did because they're not doing the things that we did. So you find a kid that doesn't do this well. Oh no, leave him alone. He's a bum. No, we say, hey, look, choke up on the back. Do this. What are you looking at? Do this, do this. All of a sudden now, hey, they're better. Say, hey man, thanks, man. Nobody's ever done that for me. And then we wonder why we growing up with a generation of kids that one seem entitled, two seem like they don't care. Nobody's ever given them a reason to care. So if you don't incentivize something for somebody, even adults, we are adults the same way. Well, why am I going to show up to work early? Do I get to leave early? Do I get a bonus? Do I get this? Do I get that? We're the same way. So for us to think that kids don't do the same things that we do as adults is just short sighted, in my opinion. Teach them well. Let them lead the way. Is that what Whitney said?
Yeah. And as you was talking, I mean, always different points come across my mind, and I think about sometimes knowing your personnel, and I often like to tell some of the stories relate to college. Now, I remember I was in the social science program where, we talked about poverty, racism, education. And I remember, shout out to Dr. McGlynn. Uh, she was getting ready to do a subject on poverty, racism, discrimination, all that stuff. And we had got done with class and we walking out. And then she was like, "Hey, David, on Friday's subject, I'm going to be talking about, uh, discrimination, racism, and all that." And I was the only black person in that class. She was like, "So I want to be sensitive to you," which I respected. And she said, "I want to be sensitive and I want to be considerate of your feelings and I want to craft my lecture that is sensitive to you." Um, because, you're only black person in it. And I looked at her and I said, "Don't do that for me. Teach it how you
Yeah,
always teach it.
yeah,
I'm built." Pretty much I said, and we didn't say that back then, but I'm built for this. I said, "Teach it how you always teach it. I'm good." She like, "Are you sure?" I said, "I'm good." She had a renowned respect for me after that because I had the luxury of, being able to go to her house to get a recommendation letter. And she had told me on this computer for life, this is for life. And I never end up getting one back after I worked and got other references. But she was like, "As long as I'm living, you will always have a recommendation letter from me." But see, that was feeling for feeling with me. Like I don't want to say anything that could make him feel a certain way. And I want to craft it. So she took my feelings in consideration. But I said I didn't want her to have to do any extra work to get out of her bubble because sometimes, you as a professor, you have your stuff and you just roll through it. You just roll through it.
yeah.
But she took the time, but I was like, "Shit, I'm cut different than these people." So I handle it, sit there, receive the message, and then we had a respect for each other. But that's taking time to know your personnel. And I always say, and people just say, you know, if you look at three important letters in the alphabet, and you can say God, God, and I'll say the next one is KYP. Know your personnel. You can't do anything without knowing your personnel. I don't give a damn what you're talking about. Co-work relationships at work, uh, family dynamics, whatever. You don't know the person you're dealing with, it's going to be end up being a disaster. So you have to take the time to know who you're dealing with first, individually. You kind of know. Parents kind of know. Well, this child ain't going to do this. Or I know that this they're going to do this. So I got to craft stuff around. You just can't be regimented and say, well, this is the way I was brought up and this is the way we did things. You have to you're gonna have to make some adjustments and shift things around. Then when you think about, that you have, might have kids by several different people,
Yeah.
that's different genetics and stuff like that. So not everybody moves differently. So you have to take the time to say, I know what motivates this kid, and this was what motivates them. You got to take the time to do that. Some people are like, nah, I do it this way or the highway,
Mhm.
or whatever the case is. And then you wonder why when they go off to college or whatever. Like, why you don't call me? I haven't heard from you, or whatever the case is. Because kids will try to get you back. They will try to get you back when they get older. And then you may be someone that's disabled, don't have no partner, and you're struggling and you're relying on them to pull up or come through, and they don't. And that's
Yeah.
how the differences happen. So, we all gotta get better. No one is better than the next. For all you people who think you super parents because your kids are getting straight A's in first grade, I don't mean you. That don't mean you the top dog uh, in anything. It's a long journey of different levels. There's academics, there's social components to it all, but at the end, you have to try to find a way to bring it all in together. And also, kids have to know who they're dealing with too. When they're dealing with their parents, they got to know. Mom go for this, dad go for that. So they got a responsibility too.
Yeah. Yeah.
They got a responsibility too as they get older. Say, nah, I know my dad, he ain't checking for that. My mom, I could pull this off. Oh, I'm about to get the keys to the car. Oh, she fall asleep at 9:30. Nah, dad, he be up. He might fall asleep, but his ass be still up. So I know I ain't gonna be able to pull it off with him right there. You gotta understand your personnel. And once you do that, that's where the empathy and all that stuff comes together, and you're like, okay, I feel them. I feel them. People used to say, I feel you. I
Yeah.
feel you. Yeah, because you
you
got a connection with them.
you mentioned something that I never even considered, like literally never even considered, and probably more so today than ever. It really needs to be discussed and understood. And we see these scenarios play out time and time again. Mother has three kids, two different men. Unfortunately for two of the children, the father doesn't have as much money, he might be financially irresponsible. For the one kid, the father's loaded, keeps his kid haircut, nice clothes. For Christmas, he sends his child the newest PlayStation. Now, they all got their own rooms, so the PlayStation's in his room. The mother says, no, we're going to put the PlayStation in the living room so everybody can play it. Now, some women may say, you know what? That's cool. Everybody should be able to play it. I'm going to disagree. And here's why. What that does is it robs the child whose father is responsible of the ability to determine how he shares. That's important because this is when they start to learn empathy. So, if his siblings behave in what his estimation is in a good way to him, guess what? He says, hey, come on in my room. we can play the game. But if he only allows one in and not the other, and the mother wants to get in there, say no. If he can go in there, he can go in there. And that's his stuff. You robbing that young man of his autonomy to govern his stuff. And you can say, no, I don't want Brandon in here because Brandon's always picking on me. Brandon's always pushing me around, but Bobby doesn't. So I want Bobby in here. Me and Bobby can play. When Brandon treats me better, guess what? Brandon can come in here. And as a good parent should, good parent says, hey, Bobby, or hey, Brandon, it's his. So whatever you're doing that he doesn't like, guess what? You need to stop it. Well, I don't know what he don't like. Did you ask him? No. Go ask him. No, I'm not going to do that. And he sit there and sulk. You say, okay, that's fine. This is your decision. You sit there and sulk, but him and Bobby going to be in there and play. And guess what? You better not say anything because you were given the opportunity to make amends. You chose not to. See, we have to stop doing this with kids. We have to stop stepping in where they're making decisions to make their own lives miserable. And we as adults, and it happened with us. Well, no, you go out there and play. No, if you don't want to go out there and play, let him sit there and be bored. Don't force him to do anything he doesn't want to. Don't force her to do anything that she doesn't want to. If they don't want to be, quote unquote, mature about it, let them suffer. We're not suffering. The other two kids are having fun. Matter of fact, go pick up a book. No, I don't want to do that. No. You don't want to go in there and learn. You're gonna go read. Well, no, I'd rather go in there and talk. Too late. Go pick up the book. And in making that point of doing that, I just came up with another thing, the stuttering. You know, that was one of the other things we had to deal with when kids was our age, was stuttering and lips. That was one thing that we used to we would make fun of people who stuttered, and it wasn't funny then. You know, we look at it now, but that was the kids. That was the generation. Yeah, I mean, I was blessed that I was actually a reasonably good speaker. I didn't have any of those issues, but we got around people that stuttered, and we didn't understand it. It was like, why can't you just say the word? Now, I know one thing that we did have in our generation growing up was a pronunciation of street and screet, ass and axe. You know, it's the same thing to me. No, you gonna cut somebody's foot off when you want to ask them a question? So stuff like that. I mean, we all have come through one way or another.
So I think I had lost my train of thought. It was it'll come back to me. And I should be
With
taking notes.
about the PlayStation or
Hmm. Oh, something. It was one. Here you go. They both came back. It was two thoughts, and I shared this story before, and I remember, my grandmother. She always wanted to have. I don't know if it was empathy or sometimes it was sympathy. I think because she felt sorry for people. And I remember at a time, we always have our bikes, and the object is to try to have a couple bikes because that was equivalent to having a car. You start off
mm,
with a Huffy, then you got BMXs, then you had a 10 speed. So I had a 10 speed, nice 10 speed. Then I had a Huffy. And in my mind, I say, I'm gonna alternate. If I ever get a flat with the 10 speed, then I can pull out my Huffy. So I always had transportation. Uh, so because I guess the Huffy would have been compared to like having like a regular car, and the 10 speed would have been like luxury. Got the gears, like you got more room if you want to ride the girl across the crossbar or whatever on the back. So I'm like, okay. And she was like, well, what you gonna do with the other bike? I said, oh, I want to keep it. She's like, nah, I think you should give it to I could call his name out because I don't think he'd give a damn. He probably one of the thugs of Niagara Falls. My man James Moore. And uh she's like, you can give it to him because he don't have no like. I don't think James never had planned to have a bike because he always used to get around by getting people bikes and disappear for 2 or 3 days. And I'm not like talking because we talk about this when I see him and he always laugh.
I saw him
And
about 3 months ago. Yeah.
yeah, then she like, well, you can give him the Huffy. And I'm like, because I knew my personnel. I knew James. I said, I don't know about that. But I didn't want to defy my grandmother, like, because she was, her word was important too. So I ended up having to give him my Huffy. Shit, maybe a day later, two later. The Huffy was still in good condition. James came over. He ain't had a Huffy. And so I'm like, yo, what a bike at? He sold it. He sold it. So I went to my grandma. I was like, see, uh, that's why I knew because I knew like if I get a flat, I would always have a back. He sold it.
Wow.
She was like, you told
I
me.
guess he saw a come up.
Yeah, you told me. You right. You told me I should have listened. I knew my personnel. Like no matter what, something ain't gonna end up right with this. And he sold it. I don't know what he sold it for, but it was a perfectly good condition bike. And I
Huffy's
thought,
with the bikes, man. See,
yeah,
if he
I
had a
thought I
Huffy,
was
he
gonna
was doing
come up.
something. Those in the, like you said, those in the BMX, and then the
Yeah,
Swing 10 speed. Those were the bikes.
because at the time the Huffies, BMX came, but then there was people, shout out to Jimmy Palmer, Wesley, and all of them who had decorated their Huffies and they was able to do wheelies over the Highland Bridge,
Oh,
all over the place. They was doing them on Huffies, and
yeah.
I still had my Huffy. It, my grandmother like, nah, give it away. James sold it. So somebody was doing wheelies and stuff on my damn Huffy that I ain't know about. He
I could never,
sold it.
man. That was one thing I could never do. I didn't have the balance. I just didn't have the timing, man. I used to be mad when I see cats doing wheelies, man. I'm just like, put that shit down. Put it
Yeah,
down.
some of them do it real low, and some could do it real high, turn corners, and just do the
Yeah,
go
man.
on and on and on. So next time I see James, I'm like, yo, you know who you ever sold my Huffy to? Shit, because but that was just a thing. And then another example was when I played football, and I remember when I played for the Eagles, I was like, damn, I want to play cornerback because I always played def. I used to like playing defensive end because you should could do the box, like do the 3 steps, then the box, and anybody coming around on the sweep, they
Get
was
him.
right there. They was right there if you did it right, or you could get at the quarterback the sack. But then I was like, man, I want to be able to play cornerback, whatever. That was in the days of like Lester Hayes, Everson Walls, and them get interceptions, and I was like, I want to play cornerback. But he never put me at cornerback, and I was like, man, I want to play cornerback, man, because shit in North Avenue we had games and we went all over it. You check people, and I was like, shit, I'm locked out. I cut off a field. I cut off a whole side of a field.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
It's funny you say
yeah,
that, man, because I remember just
yeah.
like because we were out in Griffin Manor, man, and whew, yo, you talk about I mean, just full on 11 on 11, man. Because we had a field just when you pass the Robert Moses going out to the Summer Park Mall where the pool is,
Hmm.
that field on that block, it was about 50 yards long, about 20 or so yards, no, about 30, 40 yards wide. We used to lock horns out there, man. And I remember, shout out to Squally, little fast ass, man. Once he hit that corner, he was gone. You could
Squally
catch
was
that cat,
different.
man.
Shout out to Squally. I learned a lot from Squally. A lot from Squally. When he came on to Ontario. But I think to go back to the story, I was like, I want to play cornerback. Then I think the last game, one of the last games, he put me in a cornerback. First play, I got an interception. Got an interception. Then he was like, when I came over to the sideline, he's like, you know what? He bent over. He said, I should allow you to kick me in the ass. You've been saying all season to let because I knew. I was like, man, I'll lock these dudes down. They throw my way, I'm getting a pick. I'm gonna get me a pick six and all that. But he because I was used to playing defensive. I didn't mind any. I love sacking the quarterback. But then I was like, man, I want an opportunity to freaking get a interception or a touchdown or whatever. Um, and I never was really on the offensive end because also, you know, there was politics in that. Your dad
Yeah.
had to be present. You had a dad present, you could get one of those positions because I always felt like, man, I can go toe to toe for any of them because growing up playing with older dudes on North Avenue, we played football all day long. So I was one of the younger dudes that was out there playing. But I mentioned that to say that sometimes you gotta know your personnel,
Yep.
and once you know them, you're like, man, you kind of take heed to what they say, and and that's why I advise people, even when you're working with kids, you listen to them enough, you're like, damn, they did tell me this, but they'll kind people will tell you, so you have to pay attention to people's words and validate what they're saying to kind of move forward. And when you validate stuff that people say, yeah, they have a different renowned respect for you because they know you
Yeah.
hearing them. They know you feeling what they're saying. They know you giving them an opportunity, and especially the fact that shit that when the coach bend over said you could kick me in that, he validated like, damn, my bad. You told me all along. When James sold my Huffy, my grandmother said, I'm sorry. I guess you should have kept that bike or whatever. Because you told me. I don't think, no, I don't know if this is a good choice. But because I knew James did. Whoa, I knew what he was gonna do, and he did it. He didn't give a damn because he could always get around how he wanted to. All he had to do is go on, whether it was North Avenue, whether it was Crosstown, whether it was Jordan Guys. Let me ride your bike to the store. You fell for it. He wasn't coming back for like 2, 3 days. He had a bike for like 2, 3 days. He had a bike for so
Where
that's
was that
how he
store at? New York City?
what, what you say?
I said, where was the store at? Buffalo, New York City? Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
So he always had a game plan with that. Like he could get wherever he wanted to. He just had to go to that location, and he said he should be working in transportation and logistics now. So they're like, if I got to get here, let me go over here for this day, and then he'll be gone for like 2, 3 days. Go knock on his door. Uh, is James here? No, James ain't here. He's been staying over. Like damn. Then he'll finally show up. He'll call you from like a block away and drop your bike off and then run off because he knew like, okay, now me and him about to fight, whatever. My man James. I had to say that, whatever, but I knew my personnel with him, so and he kind of knew. He knew his personnel too, what he could get away with and how he could get around and navigate.
Yeah. There's something about the intuition of kids. And like I said earlier, we would be seen, not heard. So when when you told your grandmother about it, you know, what do you know? And turns out you knew more than she thought you did. So I want to, if the parents don't take away anything else tonight from this broadcast other than this, listen to your kids. Listen to them. I'm not saying they're always right, but they do know some things about some things because they're in those things. So if somebody tells you that their friend is doing something, they want you to reach out because the friend's not listening to them. They want you to go say something to the other person's parents because the kid not listening to them. And the one time you might interfere, you might redirect some bad behavior. Because from what I've seen of these kids, most of them, they want to be liked. They want to be seen as good. It just so happens that some of them come from places where no matter what they do, they're not liked. No matter how well they perform in school, they go home and it's verbal abuse and it's nonstop. So they stop trying because nobody has said, I'm proud of you. I'm glad you're doing well. It's just some words.
Yeah. So, you know, this subject, I think empathy is something that everybody needs to learn and understand, especially in being an empathetic listener.
Mhm.
Empathetic communication is important. Again, some people want sympathy, but I think the ultimate goal is you want people to feel for you or uh, put the shoe on the other foot. And once, if you can put it on the other foot, I think it makes people sometimes take a step back and say, damn, yeah, you're right. I understand. I get it. But you got to validate people's feelings for us to have the future of compassion. So it may take some time to even deal with the younger generation to kind of value their feelings. Now, a lot of them, they headstrong. They think everything is right. Eh, the one message I always would try to send out, I know people say sometimes you gotta let people fall on their face and all that. I would say to younger people, my message and probably my closing comment to this conversation, study your people who talking to you. Again, know your personnel. Look at their track record. And if they tell you something and you believe in that person and you love that person, take what they say into consideration. And if they tell you they don't want you to fall on their face, if they don't want you to go through difficulties and go through a year or two of suffering or struggling, and you could do it this way, at least give it a thought. That notion of oh, sometimes people gotta fall and struggle because sometimes people fall and never get up,
Yeah.
and they bang their head and they never bounce back, and it's a lifetime full of trauma, distress, depression. So if you can kind of convince people to say, nah, I ain't taking that far, I ain't bumping my head, then I would encourage people to at least understand the people you're talking to. How do you value those people? And at least consider what they're saying because time ain't forever and we don't have no expiration date uh, on anything to say, oh, let somebody fall and they never get back up and then they get themselves into crazy situations or high risk activities to try to bounce back. Shit, they may not survive it. So I would say we all need to listen to each other, hear what each other saying,
Hmm.
and then make decisions based on that. And I think that's effective empathetic communication, and that's where we need to move to. And that's my closing comment.
I was writing something in the midst for closing for the show, and it was kind of based on off the theme song of Cheers. Making the way in the world today takes everything you got for these kids. Yeah, absolutely. the problem is a lot of them don't have anything. You know, they don't have guidance, they don't have direction. So when they seek it, they may be going to the wrong source. You know, may be trying to go to the parent next door, and the parent next door is worse than their parent. So who do they turn to? So when a kid reaches out to you and you don't know that kid, there's a particular reason. Ask. And like Dave said, listen and assist where you can. You don't know what your words might do or what they might salvage. And with that, I'm going to say as always, growth and understanding the curves in the gray area. Godspeed. See you next time.
And my final shout out is I don't know. I try to make the games or whatever. It's playoff time. It ain't the Buffalo Bills. It ain't the Sabres. It's the ABA team, the Buffalo Extreme. It where my nephew played whatever. They got a playoff game coming up on Saturday. If they win, then they play Sunday at home. Buffalo Bills can't lock it. Can't bring no chip home. If you're in Buffalo, Niagara Falls, come out and support these. Yeah, I know the ABA league, whatever. It ain't probably the level that it was before, and I wish the NBA would do something to put money uh, into these leagues, whatever, for people that they may play college ball, they may went overseas, and they just trying to make a little income, whatever, and they still hooping. I think it should be a little more exposure, but it's a game in Buffalo coming up. I think 6 o'clock Saturday at Exergen Gym in West Seneca. Come, go out and support. Go out and support these people, and uh, they trying to make it happen. And plus, it's time for Buffalo to get a chip in something. Chip in something. They there. They got home court advantage. So I guess the road is to St. Louis. So come out, support local people, and support young people that's trying to strive and try to do things, and that's what makes everything better when we try to support. A lot of times we pick and choose what we support based on monetary things or exposure, but sometimes you got to support stuff from the bottom, and then when it grows, you're like, damn, I was there from day one. Just like this show, it's been a slow grind. We still pushing. We still consistent. I see a lot of people, uh, have their shows that were they for a couple weeks and they out because they don't got shit to talk about. We always got. We probably could develop like 5 or 6 shows off of this conversation.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Doesn't mean we got to pay attention to what people say. A lot of times we don't. We're not listening. We're not effectively listening, and I think that's the thing. Support others, pay attention to what they're doing, and try to support them and to move forward. So with that said, we out. Another
I do
show.
have two. I have two shout outs. One is for Marcus C. Williams, for my peoples in Rochester. The young man is running for city council. Please support the young brother. And of course, my hometown boys, Big Fats and Big Miz 716. They got some music out there. Check them out on Facebook. He's also in the modeling too. So shout out to Miz. He's doing his thing. To you and your family, man, continued success.
Yeah, sitting there too. I see them. I see them putting out the work, whatever, doing their thing, whatever. And to me, it's the beauty of people trying to develop a brand, uh, doing whatever it takes is amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing because that separates you from other people trying to build a legacy,
Mm-hmm.
trying to develop something. Because after a certain point, when you get a certain age, you're like, man, what impact could I make? Building a
Yeah.
brand is impactful, and that's what it's a lot of us do it. When they talk about having black experience and all that, we need to have a new thing called. Now I don't want to keep talking. They go, well, won't you coordinate it? Uh, a brand experience, not black experience, brand
Oh,
experience. Everybody come together. Everybody come together with their brand. The brand experience.
yeah. I remember the black experiences here, man. Yo, they were events, man. Especially when they were at the convention center, like 4 days is just stuff, and then they moved to the field. Boy,
Well,
the
people can
drill
say it can
teams. I mean, man, the basketball tournaments.
be, and all that stuff can go down. Could be you can call it what you want. Black experience, the brand experience, whatever the case is. Yeah, just think about everybody coming together uh, with their brands, or even people, people from Western New York
Mhm.
coming back together. You got young people seeing that. I mean, you got talent. You got who was on this show, Big Fonz,
Yeah. Oh
um,
yeah. Yeah. Oh
Carter,
wow.
and I could tell you, and I probably never said this. Like Deuce, the guy he did the movies with, I watched a couple of his movies on Tubi, and I probably never said it publicly. But it's like, yo, he talent. Like the movies, I'd be like, yo, this shit for real. Like one day I watched a couple of them back to back, and I was like, I see it. So it's a lot of talent, even clothing design, Big Rara, Rasheen, his was authentic and different things. Like it's a lot of people doing a lot of different things, whatever, building themselves up, whatever. And I think those are the things that the younger people need to see
Yeah.
to
Oh yeah.
make them have more empathy and understanding. Like, yo, I'm connecting with the right people to
Hmm.
get to the next level. So, like I said, you see a lot. You see Los Bradbury with Niagara Falls High School building that program. See Tim Wynn with, you know, what's that? I can't think of his name. I don't know. That's bad.
He's got a training program as well.
Something
Yeah.
about winning, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Moldy Cox and all.
Yeah.
A lot
Oh
of
yeah.
different people doing their thing that needs to be recognized. That's the stuff that can uh, uplift young people to give them hope and to have more empathy towards. Because once you lose hope, you don't have no empathy for no one. You don't give a damn what's going on. And then that's when you see all the violence and stuff like that. And people start robbing from their own family members and all that stuff. But we got to do a better job of recognizing the people that's trying to grow and uh, and win. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. That is it.
So we'll see you next time. Everybody again, have a good week. Stay safe, be well, and continue grinding. And always, you know, show kindness and respect to others, even though they might not do the same to you. But be bigger than them. All right, good people. We out. On to the next
Take
one.
care.
See you next time. Peace.